Okay, a reading from 1 Kings 2, 10 through 12, 3 to 14. Then David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. He had reigned 40 years over Israel, 7 years in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the instructions given him by his father David, except that he offered sacrifices and burned incense on the high places. The king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, for that was the most important high place, and Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. But I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never be anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me, and keep my decrees and commands, as David your father did, I will give you a long life." I'm probably going to tell you this is like probably the oldest joke in the world, but it's what I'm starting with. Okay? Did you hear the one about the man who found a lamp and started to rub it? Sure enough, out popped a genie. The genie told him that he had 3 wishes. The man couldn't believe his good fortune, so he thought for a moment and then said, "I'd like a house on the beach on South Padre, make it 20,000 square feet with a boat dock and a jacuzzi." Poof! He was in that new house. The genie then said, "What's your next wish?" The man replied, "I'd like a black BMW fully loaded with the best stereo system money can buy." Poof! The guy was suddenly driving the car. As he was cruising down the highway, a commercial came on the radio, and he started singing along. "Oh, I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener." Poof! Yeah, someone hadn't heard it. All right. There's probably a very good reason we don't get everything we ask for. I know if I had 3 wishes, I'm sure I would make the same sort of mistake the man in the story I just told you did. I remember a Twilight Zone where a young boy had the power to simply wish for anything he wanted whenever he wanted. In a short time, the world he lived in was a nightmare world where everything happened as his 8-year-old mind wanted it to. He had extraordinary power, but he didn't know what to do with it. In today's reading, Solomon has inherited enormous power, and when God comes to him in a dream and offers to grant him whatever he desires, Solomon shows that he is already pretty smart. He asks for the wisdom to guide God's people. He says, "Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" And this is clearly the right answer. God is pleased with Solomon's reply and promises to give him both wisdom and riches and long life. But what exactly is wisdom? That's a tough question, isn't it? I know I've read a lot of books and I've been to college, and I'm even occasionally clever, but I also know that I am far from wise. I was really struck by Solomon's request of God, and I began to look through the Bible for references to wisdom. Now in Proverbs 1 verse 7 we read that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Here, fear really means just a healthy respect for God. It means acknowledging that His knowledge is not our knowledge. We cannot hope to always understand God's plan for us and those we love, but we can respect and trust that there is a plan. Humbleness before God is the first step towards true wisdom. This humbleness before God can be difficult to achieve. I'm willing to bet all of us have at one time or another wondered, why is God doing this to me? Instead of asking why, maybe we should ask how. How does God want me to react? Or what? What does God want me to learn? Maybe we need to accept the idea that He who has given us life gets to have a say in what happens in that life. In Proverbs 9 refers to wisdom as a woman. It reads, "Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has also furnished her table. She has sent out her maidens. She cries from the highest places of the city, 'Whoever is simple, let him turn in here.' As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, 'Come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed.'" Here we are told in this proverb that wisdom is available to us. As a matter of fact, wisdom is throwing a party and she wants us to attend. And it's no accident she's offering us blood and wine. And here's another clue to the nature of wisdom. Communion is an act that brings us closer to God. And I think the closer we are to God, the wiser we get. But what are these 7 pillars mentioned in Proverb 9? Most biblical scholars believe they are enumerated in James 3:17, which reads, "But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere." As I read this passage, I couldn't help but use it as a measure of my experiences with Mount Calvary, which is the only church to which I have ever felt a sense of belonging. The first pillar is purity. I think that many of us in this church have had our faith tested in ways that others have not. Imagine the purity of a faith that insists on the right to worship a God that so many have untruthfully told us is against us. That, I think, is a purity of faith. The second pillar is peaceableness. Over and over again, we hear about the peace of mind this church has brought to people, whether they come every Sunday or just a couple of times. The third pillar is consideration. Have you seen how we greet each other? Have you listened during joys and concerns? This is a place of empathy, of concern. Because of Mount Calvary, I know I have probably half a dozen people or more whom I could call to discuss a problem or a bad day. The fourth pillar is submissiveness to the will of God. I have learned that sometimes the only way to handle what life throws at us is to place our faith and our lives in God's hands, as a small child does with its parent, and to trust that He will either give us what we need or the strength to endure. The fifth pillar is mercy and good fruits. Good fruits means basically the rewards of being merciful and being compassionate beings. The school supply drives and the Easter baskets and the Christmas toy drive and the hundreds of different ways people give to this church are so uplifting and so inspiring that the simple act of participation brings its own rewards. The sixth pillar is the spirit of impartiality. Here we leave the judging to the only one who can judge.
Amen.
The seventh pillar is sincerity, and with sincerity comes a freedom from hypocrisy. Here we can be who we are and glory in the fact that each of us is exactly as God wishes us to be. I've gone down this list to point out how closely Mount Calvary, this little space in this little mall, resembles the house of wisdom described in Proverb 9. The 7 pillars are here, just as surely as our aging carpet and our cracked walls. It is these pillars begun by the founders of our church and built up by everyone who has walked through that door that are the real sheltering structure of the church. Now, Jonathan often has to remind me that I'm not up here just to give a lesson. When I'm here, I should offer something that people can use. And I think these 7 pillars are a good way to decide if the choices we make are wise or not. You see, wisdom is only of any use when it is being exercised. You can be the wisest man on earth, but if you're sitting on top of a mountain and not sharing it, what good does it do? Wisdom is active. It is the choices we make in our lives that demonstrate wisdom. And this verse from James describing the 7 pillars gives us a guide by which to judge our choices and to help us be wise. We can judge our actions by asking ourselves these questions. Are we choosing to be pure of faith? Are we being submissive to God's will? Are our actions peaceable? Are we considerate of others? Are we merciful, sincere, impartial? Most of the poor choices I have made in my life, and there have been many, occurred when I let my own emotions and desires govern my actions. I've never done anything that turned out to be even accidentally wise when I have acted from anger or resentment or from a selfish desire to satisfy only my own needs. Wisdom is how you act, how you respond to God and life, not what you know. Doesn't come with a degree or a license, and you don't have to go live in a monastery in Tibet to find it. Like most things worth looking for, it is right at our fingertips. We have only to clear our minds, shut out the voices of the world, and wait quietly for God to plant the answer in our hearts. I believe this is true, and I hope these are indeed words you can use. Thank you.